the thing that was really striking was that as soon as my brother's wedding was over, a number of her close friends immediately reached out to me and they expressed their concern. And I was grateful that they did. And I realized that, that's probably something that could be really stressful for individuals to have, other people in their lives or in their loved ones' lives reaching out to you to express concern about their health or about their well-being. Yeah. But in this particular instance, my brother lived across the state of Ohio from her. I lived across the country from her. And so even though we were, definitely on the phone a lot and kept in touch, I didn't see it as consistently as they obviously saw it. Mm-hmm. So having their input, having their, them expressing their concern was something that was incredibly illuminating to me, but also made it absolutely something that we had to respond to.
Dimensions of Dementia is an educational video series from the Alzheimer's Association Greater Cincinnati Chapter. Join us each week for personal stories, engaging conversations, and educational content exploring issues such as caregiving, identifying warning signs, dealing with disease symptoms, and latest advances in diagnostics and treatments.
Thanks for joining us for Dimensions of Dementia. I am Dayna Ritchey. I'm the program director for Greater Cincinnati and Miami Valley chapters of the Alzheimer's Association.
And I'm Andrew Pytlik. I am the director for the Cincinnati Tri-State Walk to End Alzheimer's. And we are so grateful for our sponsors, Life Enriching Communities, for helping us get this podcast going.
Yes, thank you very much. So one of the reasons Andrew and I wanted to do this podcast and kind of have some conversations around some educational topics was because of our personal connections to the disease. So my mother died of Alzheimer's in January of 2021, and she was 78.
And my mother died at the age of 69 in January of 2024. So early onset Alzheimer's, she was diagnosed at 59.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rare. There's around 200,000 Americans that get diagnosed before the age of 65, which is a lot, but there are over 7 million Americans that have some type of dementia, so it's rare.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate, but a good thing to point out, because a lot of people, they're told by their doctor when they go to talk about symptoms, oh, you're too young for Alzheimer's. We're not even going to look in that direction.
Right. And I feel like actually in a lot of the conversations that I have throughout our community and about our work, I hear a lot of stories about early onset Alzheimer's. And I don't know if that's just because it's so striking when it happens.
Yeah.
But for as uncommon as it is, it still is somewhat common.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've been talking a bit about the warning signs of dementia. If you want to see all 10 warning signs and the difference between these and just normal, frustrating aging, go to alz.org/dimensions of dementia and look up the 10 warning signs. But a real quick rundown. One is memory loss, but memory loss that's actually disrupting your daily life, challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks, confusion with time or place, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships, new problems with words in speaking or writing, misplacing things. Not just that, but losing the ability to retrace your steps when you misplace things, decreased or poor judgment, withdrawing from work or social activities, and changes in mood and personality. So you were sharing with us a little bit about some of the signs you saw in your mom around planning your brother's wedding. So could we just maybe recap some of those signs, and then how did you guys have this conversation with her, especially at that young age, to say, Mom, there's some things that don't seem right here?
Yeah. Well, with my mom, we noticed a couple of striking examples. One was her repetition. She was repeating herself a lot in the planning of my brother's wedding, asking the same question 2, 3, or 4 times within a span of, 10 minutes or 15 minutes. That seemed unusual. She was having difficulty kind of comprehending seating arrangements at tables, guest lists, things of that nature. And because she had always been a great host, that felt weird to us.
Yeah.
And then also because she was a school teacher for 30 plus years, she had incredible handwriting and just always had a very kind of comfortable relationship with the written word on a page.
Yeah.
And that just absolutely went south really rapidly and in an alarming way. So we kind of realized, these three things all together probably indicated something was going on.
Yeah.
We, didn't have much of a family connection with Alzheimer's to our knowledge. I had a great grandmother on her side who had Alzheimer's, but had Alzheimer's in her 80s.
Yeah.
Kind of passed on at that point in her life, and that didn't, feel so unnatural or so weird.
Sure.
But for my mom at the age of 59 to be struggling with putting together, her role in my brother's wedding after, spending years and years throwing the best parties of my life, just didn't seem right. And so.
And you said some of her friends called you as well with some concerns.
Yeah. So, my brother and I, as we were getting closer to his wedding and realizing something was maybe going on, we talked about it, but we didn't want to talk about it like a lot. We were just like, well, let's put a pin in that. Let's revisit it. But I definitely think that let's have the conversation with her, but go on your honeymoon.
Right.
But the thing that was really striking was that as soon as my brother's wedding was over, a number of her close friends immediately reached out to me and they expressed their concern. And I was grateful that they did. And I realized that, that's probably something that could be really stressful for individuals to have, other people in their lives or in their loved ones' lives reaching out to you to express concern about their health or about their well-being.
Yeah.
But in this particular instance, my brother lived across the state of Ohio from her. I lived across the country from her. And so even though we were, definitely on the phone a lot and kept in touch, I didn't see it as consistently as they obviously saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So having their input, having their, them expressing their concern was something that was incredibly illuminating to me, but also made it absolutely something that we had to respond to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We had to bring it up with my mom and we had to do it as soon as we could.
Yeah. So brother comes back from his honeymoon.
Hey, Matt, how was it? Oh, you guys did dune buggies? That sounds cool. All right. What's our plan with mom? And
you're cold.
Yeah.
Your poor brother.
Stone cold.
Were you married yet?
No.
So you had no real understanding of coming back from a honeymoon.
Yeah, I know. I did not. But he was ready to talk about it, to his credit. He's, my brother is the kind of guy who he wants to solve a problem too. And certainly, we both love my mom so much, our mom so much, that, we wanted to make sure that the best thing possible could happen for her. And it seems that best thing would be, okay, let's get you to a doctor right now. So we kind of discussed, how are we going to bring this up with her?
Yeah.
How are we going to approach it? And we were afraid, of course, that she would be defensive.
Yeah.
We were afraid that she would shrug it off and just say, you guys are being silly. I'm fine.
Yeah. Was your dad involved in this conversation?
Well, they're divorced.
Oh, okay.
So he, my parents maintained a really respectful and cordial relationship after the divorce. And certainly my dad was part of the wedding as well. But that wasn't a conversation that we were having with him.
Got it.
He was dating, he was living his best gym life, so we were.
So it was really on the brothers.
It was on the two sons to figure out how to approach mom and get her the support she needed.
Yeah.
And while we were concerned that she might be defensive, we were both so grateful that she took our concern seriously. And I think that one of the things that was important was we were concerned. We were very legitimately concerned, and we expressed our concern about not just the symptoms, but the fact that the symptoms that she was exhibiting were a very specific change in behavior.
Yeah.
Mom, this isn't you. This is not the way that we've always known you to be.
Right.
And it makes us concerned about you.
Right.
Being able to communicate it in that way was something that I think disarmed her.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think she really realized that was going on in her life.
Mm-hmm.
But for her two boys to express heartfelt concern about that, and then for us to be able to tell her that a number of her friends had been in touch as well and that they had been noticing things, that was something that I think struck a chord in her brain. And she realized, okay, maybe we should do something about this.
Yeah, you are really lucky in some ways she wasn't so defensive. But
oh my gosh, yes.
I think there's a phrase you used there about it was heartfelt concern. You know, I think like you said, you disarmed her because you came at it from a love and concern versus an accusation.
Right.
Finger pointing.
Right. She was living by herself. We wanted to make sure that she could be safe doing that. And, you know, I don't think at that point we realized that, you know, repetition in question asking or, you know, oh my gosh, like I'm not writing on a page the same way that I used to. Like that doesn't necessarily lend itself immediately to thinking, well, my mom's not safe.
Right.
But if it was indicative of something else that was going on in her brain, it could absolutely lead to something that could be unsafe. And so that was something that we wanted to be able to communicate in our concern for her. But I mean, it wasn't just something that we wanted to communicate. It was something that we really deeply felt.
Yeah. Were you thinking like, this is Alzheimer's? Or were you thinking, I have no idea what this is, but it's not right?
I am not a very religious guy, but I was praying that it wasn't.
Yeah. So you knew
I knew that this disease was the biggest fear that she had in her life. It was like the only thing that she was afraid of. And as a result, it's one of the only things that I'm afraid of as well.
Wow.
And so we were hoping that it might, I don't know what it was, like it could have been poor sleep, dehydration. I don't know. Like we're just hoping it could have been anything else. And it turns out it wasn't. We were lucky. She was living up in the Cleveland area. And so we expressed our concern to her in February of 2014. And by April of 2014, she had a diagnosis.
Wow.
Which was devastating and heartbreaking. And I spent so much time crying.
Yeah.
And I know she did. And I know that my brother did.
Yeah.
But to be able to get that diagnosis early in the process, because we took those symptoms seriously.
Right.
And to, you know, the fact that she lived in a place where she was able to get that diagnosis quickly.
Right.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
And I think as a result, she was able to live with dignity for a long, long time after her diagnosis. She lived with the diagnosis for 10 years.
Wow.
She lived independently for 5 years. And the entire time that she lived independently, she continued to tutor kids in her community.
Wow.
Which was really something. And at her memorial service, you know, we were in the receiving line. I think that as a teacher, she had just so many people in her community that came to remember her and offer their condolences. One of the last people that came through the line was the final student that she worked with. And he'd come to her as a sophomore in high school who could not read.
Wow.
He was illiterate, and a principal that had been working with him was a friend of my mom's, figured, well, if anybody can help this kid read, it's her. And they were able to work together. And when he came through her receiving line, he was so excited to introduce himself as a high school graduate because she taught him how to read.
Wow.
And it blew me away.
And she did that while she was living.
She did that with the diagnosis.
Wow.
And everybody that she worked with during that time, she said, I have this disease, but I've been a teacher my whole life. And I'm going to keep doing this until I can't. And if you think that I can't do it, let me know and we'll stop.
Yeah.
But it gave her life purpose for so many more years.
Right.
And she was able to impact the lives of other kids in her community. And I really think that's because we took the symptoms seriously.
Right.
She took our concerns seriously.
Right.
And she was able to get a diagnosis in a healthcare system faster than normal.
Right. Well, and the fact that she said, like, at any time, if you guys are concerned I can't continue, like, let me know, because she wasn't just being stubborn. She
Yeah.
But like you said, she wanted to have a purpose. She wanted to share what her knowledge and her gifts were for as long as possible.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, she inspired all the way through.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like it. She sounds like an incredible person.
Yeah.
Living with the disease. So thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that was hard because it's only been a little bit of time now since that all happened. But we appreciate you having, the courage to share, but also putting a positive face to how she lived with the disease. So many people, they just kind of want to go in a black hole, and it's understanding why.
Sure. Yeah.
When you're diagnosed with a terminal disease. But, she just had the attitude of like, I'm just going to keep doing what I can do for as long as I can. And really such an inspirational attitude.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that sentiment. She had the brightest smile that I ever knew.
Aww.
And was larger than life all the way through. And to be able to share the story of Terry Pytlik is something that I'll do as long as I can.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, this kind of ends this particular episode. We do want to thank again our sponsor for this episode from Life Enriching Communities. And we'll be back in the future with another episode of Dimensions of Dementia.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
If you want to support this show, please share it with others in your life who have been impacted by this disease. We can't do this on our own. For more information about the topics discussed today, or if you have questions about Alzheimer's and other dementia, please visit alz.org/dimensions of dementia, or call our 24/7 helpline at 800-272-3900. And if you want to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association through volunteering or raising funds for research, check out the links in our description.